Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. We're back, and I know y'all miss me. This is How Goes the Hour with Willie Flowers and the Maryland NAACP. We have a lot to update you on, a lot going on in this world and in our nation. Before we do anything, I want to really do a shout out and peace be unto the life of Mr. Kent Carter, who was a member of the branch in Arlington, Virginia. The report came out this week that he was killed while he was on vacation in Tokes. Um, and so I want to give a shout out to him, peace to his soul, love to his family, because doing this work, and again, I remind people the NAACP pays the same thing as they paid in 1909. And so doing this work takes time away from your family, takes time away from what you're trying to do professionally. And it sounds like he was taking a vacation and something horrible happened. So I want to certainly keep him in our prayers and love to the family as they move forward during this time of grief. And again, that's a shout out to Mr. Kent Carter in Arlington, Virginia. There are a lot of things going on in the country. Also, this week, as it happens, that if anybody knows anything about country music, Miss Loretta Lynn died at 90, and people forget about her, but she was kind of the person who put this folk music and celebrating just being raised in poverty and this kind of thing. And part of everything that we do, we should embrace the love in our raising because you're still here, right? And so she did that in a magnificent way with one song called "A Coal Miner's Daughter," and I remember that from when I was a little guy. But I was sad to hear that she transitioned, but she lived a long life and she did a lot of things. The significance, one thing that I learned recently about what she did against the white establishment was on the night that Charlie Pride, who is a historic and one of the more early successful African American country singers, Charlie Pride, he was going to receive an award and she was going to present it. And apparently the producers or whatever told her, don't even touch him. And she went as far as to give him a kiss on the cheek on national TV in front of all these white folks. And I guess that was controversial at the time. So shout out to her, her spirit, and that type of stuff helps break these barriers where these isms have us in divisions and in control and all this type of nonsense. And those types of touch points in history are forgotten about. But we have to think about how to acknowledge folks for work they don't. I don't think she wanted to make history doing it, but that's what she did. So I want to give a shout out to her. I want to close out this monologue with letting everybody know that on October 21st and October 22nd, the Maryland State Conference NAACP is doing our annual convention. It's going to be virtual. Check our site when you have the opportunity. And that's when we do our business for the year. Again, it's a lot of stuff going on with this election. We certainly want to uplift any positive spirit that comes through there so that we can continue to do the work of the NAACP. Now, in one of my monologues over the last few weeks, we've talked on a couple of occasions about the significance of the Woman King to our community, but the world. I mean, you can look at it any kind of way you want to, but I take the position because I love cinema, I love art, I love everything about it, but I do know that there are always mechanisms in place to carry out, whether it's good or bad, to carry out some designs that we might not necessarily know about. And I'm going to use the example of The Birth of a Nation, which it brought back the Ku Klux Klan. The Birth of a Nation, as most know, was the first film that was shown in the White House. And it was all about the Klan. It came from a book called The Klansman, but The Birth of a Nation triggered the Klan and enhanced, domestic terrorism, all this kind of stuff, whatever goes with that. There are many details and example of it. So that helped if they were trying to promote racism and white supremacy, that's what it did. And then a few years later, the mass media, one of the biggest films ever, still going, um, the mainstream community came forth with the movie called Gone with the Wind. And what Gone with the Wind did for white folks, I'll say mainstream white folks at that time, was it inspired them to see this fictional beauty of the antebellum South. It inspired them to feel like, you know, it wasn't an anti uh, slavery or abolition movie. It was a movie about celebrating the Civil War and how great it was to have all these slaves and all this land and on and on and on. And then it kind of worked. If you watch it, and I encourage everybody to watch it, it worked to make it look like there was something wrong with the Union Army coming to the South and won the Civil War. It doesn't talk about anything about abolition and all this. How black folks should have been never should have been enslaved in the first place. It reinforces what they wanted to believe about their heritage. I'm not going to get into that as much as I'm getting to that traditionally the mass media, cinema, has been used and has been designed to inspire those types of tidbits that we don't see. But if we look back on all these details, and I stand behind everything I said, we don't see it, but that's what happens. So we're going to fast forward from the early 1900s to 2022. And the discussion we've been having for the last few weeks about some forces that didn't want folks to watch The Woman King. And I, it's my opinion that there were some barriers on the discussion about this Black Mermaid piece that was supposed to distract people from something. When I heard about it, I was like, who's going to be upset about a fiction mermaid and a Black girl being in it? I just thought it was weird. And then the same week that I had a public conversation about this, I learned that Woman King was coming. So I said, oh, that's it. I got to go watch this movie. And so when I went and watched this movie, and I'm watching to see what's going to go down, the one tidbit that came to me was the introduction of what is being called African traditional religion, and through the practice of Ifa. And if anybody has been around, particularly, I'll say Baltimore City, there seems to be a large movement of people returning to their faith or their religion, and there are tremendous breakthroughs. Now, I happen to believe that if you're going to be empowered by something that other people can't control, they're going to fear you. And I have two guests on today who have been members. They can explain the details of how they have been associated with their choice, but their experience with African traditional religion through the lens of Ifa. And I want to introduce Miss Patsy P.J. Cannon. She can articulate her given name, and Miss Charmaine Turner, and she can do the same thing. But these are two sisters who have been I've been exposed to for some time now, and I've lucky enough to have them as friends, so that the introduction to Ifa has been a positive to me, and I certainly look forward to listening to what they have to share on this show. And let me add, I'm very excited about this conversation. I'm very excited about what they have already done, and I'm hoping that it can be shared with as many of our people as possible, because in times like these, and you can look at what we've experienced in the last 3 years, in times like these, we need something that's going to embrace us, something that we can be inspired to do, and a new community that can help us do it. So I want to introduce these two sisters, and let them take the floor. And I'll just start by giving you an opportunity, and we can go into whatever order you like. What did you feel when this The Woman King came on, and you saw the positive introduction of Ifa?
Well, I can tell you, I was very emotional when I saw it. I was at the Senator Theater and I was acting like a colored person in the movie house. I did get excited, but I want to point out that if you remember Harriet Tubman, the movie Harriet Tubman, she introduced it as well. Remember, she went to the tree
Right.
and she addressed her ancestors. So you're right, it's coming. They can't hold it away from us. And funny thing, I was introduced to Ifa. I had no clue about Ifa. I wasn't looking for another religion. You know, I was a science of mind practitioner. The thing I was missing was um, ritual. So my ancestors literally brought me to Ifa. I didn't know anything about it. I can honestly say I had a supernatural experience in being introduced to it. But in terms of seeing the movie, there were certain key points. Um, I don't know about you, Charmaine. Oyaranti. Okay. Um, when I saw the when I saw I can't remember the names. Okay, so forgive me for that. But Viola Davis going get her daughter and those weapons and that march. I didn't see. Oh yeah, yeah. You know who I saw? Yes, woo! And I hollered at in the movie, Ogunye. So to understand what Ifa looks at the elements of nature. In other words, traditional religion, Christianity gives us the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Ifa says, yeah, that too. But let me tell you, the wind, the river, steel, warrior spirit, the steel. When they were marching, most people who may be somewhat familiar with the Orishas would probably want to say, oh, that's Oya, because the women were very dominant and prominent, and Oya is a female warrior. But the energy of that steel and that kind of, it wasn't, they weren't marching in grace. They were marching in like warriors. And so Ogun is the Orisha of steel. He's a warrior. He comes from out the forest and he is ready for battle. So I think that was the first time I screamed out. I don't know if there was, I can't, I know there were other times, when she showed the heads rolling. But at that point, I really felt the element of nature, of steel, of the warrior spirit. And it doesn't matter if it's male or female, you could just see that element engrossed in nature, the nature of steel, protection, fighting. Those weapons were very sharp, all made of steel. So that's the element of Ogun, and we see God in that. So that's just a little synopsis of where I first saw it, and then there were other places that we can talk about. But that was the one scream out that I remember the most, and it just gave me goosebumps, and I started crying. Oguye!
Ashe. Um, yeah, I felt similar with when I saw it, and I saw the little doll that they were putting on,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, okay, that's Ogun, right there. What I will say is, when I saw the movie, I thought about Ogun, of course, but then I did think about my Yeye Oya, right? From a perspective of not only being a warrior, but also being a healer, right? And what does that look like when you put those two together, being a warrior healer? Because while they were there protecting their space and their people, they also was bringing about change and transformation and healing their nation at the same time, by saying, you know what, we can be and we can do something different than what everyone else is doing and still remain the great kingdom that we are, without being caught in this colonization of, we crabs in a barrel and we got to get ours, and we everybody try to get to the top. And so that is really what struck me, from a perspective of Ifa in the movie, how they were using this. And there was a line in the movie where Viola said, she said something like bringing the subtle winds and the fierce storms.
Okay.
I'm
Yes.
like, that's the
Oh yeah.
old to my yay. But she
Yeah.
was saying that in that one little line, what she said was, have those subtle winds and those storms to bring the ancestors in at this time to support us and to help us as we stand on their shoulders to fight this good fight and to heal our nation.
Yes.
And of everything, that is what that I was most moved by and took away from that movie.
I see. And you
Well,
want to let them know who Oya is?
yeah,
Give them a
you
description.
can take time to explain anything, because I think everybody's a sponge, so whatever you can share is beneficial.
Yep. So, and without going into anything just like really long, but Oya is, she is in Orisha, as well, and she is one of the favored wives of another warrior, Shango Kabiesi, and with Oya is, like I said earlier, she is the bringer of change. She is transformation. When you think about, I have some changes I need to be able to make in my life, and I need to make them swiftly, right? Or Yah is the person that you would go to and that you would pray to. All of the Orisha you go to and you can pray to, but Oya has that what you would call it, that specialty, right? That is what she is known for. When there's a thunderstorm, when there are those swift winds or those subtle winds. She works in tangent or in partnership, should I say, with other Orisha who are wind Orishas to bring about those subtle winds for that transformation to happen and to take place. And so I could go on, on and on, but in a nutshell for the listening audience, change and transformation. Oya is also what some people will call the gatekeeper of the cemetery, depending on what part of the tradition that is your lineage. But that is also still part of their transition, right? I am transitioning from this life to the next life. And it's part of the work that I do in the community, and how I've used this African spiritual system to bring about my gifts and give back to the community is through death dueling. So I am a death doula, yeah. When I think about my time in Nigeria when I was initiated, that is what came, right. This is and it's always been there in my life. But when I was crowned with Oya, I was like, oh, this is confirmation here. I need to be able to do this work on a bigger platform. And so one of the things that I do from the perspective of supporting or doing the work of Oya is helping to people to transition with some level of dignity.
And that is definitely crucial. What does your name mean? Yeah.
Oya remembers me.
I see.
Yes, yes. And what about Oshun? Can you share
Oh
with the
shoot,
audience?
I have several names, of course. Falake, Ifa Pamelaran, Oshun Yoyen, um, and I got a new one, Okune. So Ifa Pamelaran means Ifa makes me happy. Oshun Yoyen, Oshun brings the honey. Falake, Oshun, Ifa makes me wealthy. And then Okunde is that Olokun created a leader. So for me, when I got Oshun, I actually cried because I was so delighted that she would claim me. Of course, like you, she's the goddess of fresh water, and she's known for her sensuality, her sexuality, her sensuousness, her fertility, her manifestation abilities, her wealth, and she's also a fighter. And even in the Woman King, we could see Oshun show up. Do you know where she showed up? Do you remember where she showed up?
Oh, I think I would like to say that she showed up between the relationship between little mama and that gentleman from the
The
British.
mulatto.
Right.
Yes, yes. He was her aide to help them escape and do what they needed to do. Um, and so Oshun is known for bringing her sensuousness to save humankind, to save mankind. So when you're looking at life through that lens, and when you mention, oh yeah, there being a transformation, even for the audience, you can see where all of a sudden you see things shifting. This month, September has been one of the craziest months in my life. And I can see, I was just thinking, oh yeah, I can see her coming through and she'll turn things topsy turvy to get it right side. So that's her aspect. And so when you're looking at life from the lens of Ifa, you have a tendency to do that because you recognize the elements of nature, and we refer to it as ashe, the ashe of the elements of nature, which can cause a shift in our lives and bring us to balance and harmony. And we intentionally use those elements for our highest good. We do prescriptions, which we call EBOs. So in terms of back to what you were saying about the movie and how Ifa is showing up, I think it's been long awaited. And like I said, yeah, I did not know anything about Ifa, Oshun, or anybody else when I was led to Ifa. As a matter of fact, I'm a child of the 60s, and I did so much Black Power and the woke and all that back then. If somebody had come to me with it, I would have said, yeah, I did that. I'm not ready for it. So I didn't come to the tradition looking to connect with my past. I came because my ancestors, my mother, who was a deaconess in the church and who transitioned, literally moved things in my home and brought the ancestors' presence into my life, that when I was at my center talking about the ancestors, and there were about a dozen people at the center that day, there was an Iya in the center who said, that's what I do. That's how I help people connect with their ancestors. And from there, from the ancestors, which is the foundation of this practice, I was led to Ifa. So I think what we're hoping, Willie, of course, is that this awakening, this connection, this dismantling the theory that this is an evil practice. I think we are awakening to our own spirituality, our own tradition, which will help transform our lives. And I have many clients who are still practicing Christians, and I don't introduce it as any of it as contradictory.
Well,
Yeah. Could I just respond to that, Willie?
Okay.
Okay, no, but just to say that, but just to respond really fast to what Ian was saying. So I was introduced to, I guess you could say, African spiritual systems through my Christian church. I was a member of Union Temple Baptist Church in DC with Reverend Willie Wilson, and and Reverend Willie Wilson is an Akan priestess, which is native to Ghana, and Willie, our tradition is more native to Nigeria, or to the Yoruba people, and so that introduction came from just an African spiritual system through the Christian pathway. And what I will say is, when we're having these conversations, I ask people all the time, things like, do you have obituaries that you keep? Right? Do you have a Bible with all of the names that you've written down? Do you have a space in your home when your grandmama passed away that you got a candle and her obituary sitting right there and you put flowers on there every now and again? That's the same tradition as Ifa, coming through and coming from a Christian perspective, because that's all we know now. But trust and believe, Spirit has passed that down from generation to generation to move it forward so that we would not forget. Right? When we pour a little something out for the homie, that's pouring libation, right? And so I tell folks all the time, educate yourself and really learn before you decide that you want to demonize a system that you are actually part of, and don't even realize that you're practicing those same traditions, but in the name of something else different. And that's only because, and keep in mind, like there's that muscle memory. It's easy for you to pour a little something out for the homie. It's easy for you to go and pray to your ancestors, to your mama, please come and help me, because it's part of our DNA. It is rooted in who we are as Black people and brought over here across the water in the same way. It's manifested very different because we've been colonized, right? And we've had to hide. But same thing at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Right. My question was, how did you come to it? And you kind of explained it. So I want to, it's remarkable that you highlighted, I guess, one of the chants meditations that they expressed in the movie, but I wanted to read this, and you may know it. It's Duty Bookman's prayer, and this is the prayer that kicked off the Haitian Revolution, and it goes like this: the God of our who created the earth, who created the sun that gives us light, the God who holds us up the ocean, who makes the thunder roar, our God who has ears to hear, you who are hidden in the clouds, who watch us from where you are. You see all the white has made us suffer. The white man's God asks him to commit crimes, but the God within us wants us to do good. Our God, who is so good, so just, orders us to avenge our wrongs. It's our God who will direct our arms and bring us victory. It's our God who will assist us. We all should throw away the image of the white man's God and who is so pitiless. Listen to the voice for liberty that sings in all of us. And that was the mantra, if you will, that kicked off the Haitian Revolution. Now, I mean, I want a revolution, and I think that this revolution took it to another level. It had ramifications that we are experiencing and feeling to this day. But I think the revolution was from within, and that's what you know. And this is not a conversation about trying to compare Christianity with what we're talking about. It is my interest to see where that resonates with me. And if we get that momentum in everything that we're doing, it's going to be a different world, particularly for our people, and particularly when we're talking about breaking these chains of what we know as colonialism that still exists, and what we know as white supremacy that kind of shrouds everything that we do in this country. So I wanted to I want to uplift that because that was the tipping point for the Haitian Revolution, as explained. But since then, every practice that has been a part of what makes us strong has been demonized. Not only has the practices that we have been demonized, but in America, at that point, they didn't want Black folks to read anymore because, as you know, the French Haitian revolutionaries were colonized by France, and at that time, they didn't see a challenge with someone being, somewhat educated, and I guess that was viewed as why they were able to overthrow the French army.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things I would say is, as I listen to that, I've just thought about exactly what Ed just said. He talked about earth, he talked about water, he talked about the sun, he talked about thunder, the elements, right? What are those things that are in nature that we can draw upon to help support us? He talked about doing good. Part of the basis of our tradition is Iwa Pele, and it just means good character, right? It just means have good character in any and everything that you do. Be just, be honest. All of those good things. Help your neighbor, help your friends. But have good character in all of who you are and what you do. And that's essentially what this gentleman said in this ode to the Haitian Revolution is we're going to have good character. We're going to have that Iwa Pele, and we're going to use all the elements to help our spirit and our soul to carry out whatever it is that we need to do for this revolution. And at the end of the day, Haiti, we all know the story, so we don't have to go there. But I think about Beyonce. Hey, you can't break my soul, right? And that's essentially what they say. Y'all can do all these things, but what you won't do is break our soul. White supremacy, all of the stuff that's happening here, redlining, institutional racism, all of that. Guess what? They thought we were seeds. I mean, they buried us and thought that, they were burying us. We seeds. We just keep coming back
Right.
and, replanted and co. It's like, so that's what I was reminded of when you were reading that.
Gosh, very good point. And to think about the fact that my mother brought me to this practice. My mother was a deaconess in the church. My father was a Baptist minister. And Willie, you know the story. I did, become a metaphysician, a science of mind practitioner, which were the steps that led me here. But you're right, it's in our DNA. And I'm just excited how many people are even awakening. And I love how you remind people, okay, you're honoring your ancestors anyway. And every one of us can talk about somebody dead who came to with a smell, a word, in a dream. So we know they are alive. And I think our ancestors, if we even just tune into that, our ancestors, I believe, they're ready to be venerated, they're ready to be honored, and they are so ready to help us come out of this murk and mire. They're ready to lift us up. But we have to be attuned, and we want to take the next steps.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's awakening everywhere. When you think about it, even these Disney movies.
Yes.
All of the for the children. If you actually Coco, sit down, Moana, all of these Disney movies that are coming out. What's the new one? We don't talk about Bruno. I can't think of the name.
Yes.
Right? But all of these movies, there is definitely an awakening. In the atmosphere. That is just about spirit, right? And being able to connect. Our ancestors are speaking to us in many different ways. And while it just comes to us intuitively, with white people, they got to go do the research, they doing all that. And that's fine. That's all well and good to make those movies. But when we're sitting down with our children and our grandchildren, in my case, there is opportunity for us to be able to share exactly what that is and what that means. Those messages are being spread in so many ways in the media in terms of being able to connect with spirit and being able to connect with your ancestors and to tap within. There is something, in the atmosphere from an astrological standpoint. And I could go on and on, but I'm not going to do that here. But know and understand that there are opportunities. And I'm just saying this, even for your listening audience, when you are even watching those Disney movies, to have those conversations with your young children, right? About, their grandma mom who passed away and how you can still call on them and talk to them on a daily basis. And they're showing you this in these platforms, even in some of these movies, but not even just Disney, so many other ones, right? But it just made me think about the Cocos and the Moanas. Heck, the Lion King. Let's go all the way back there. The Lion King. Mufasa, passed on, but he was still coming back. He was still teaching Simba, lessons, even as he transitioned to the ancestral realm.
Now, there was another tidbit, because it's important to talk about, because I'm from the South, and the I guess it came to me in the lens of voodoo and the scariness of that. But when I was exposed to what I know now, I was always attracted to it. It was kind of weird. I felt comfortable, and it was always interesting. and it wasn't confirmed until I went to Hilton Head, South Carolina, with the Gullah, who really retained some of the practice, and we know about that. And some of the symbols are there, and all of the symbols that, like the blue, painting things blue, and the bottles on the tree, all of that was what I saw, but I didn't know how to explain it. And there was one little lady who did that in our neighborhood, who everybody treated like she was weird. But again, I was really drawn to it. I was very curious about it, and now I feel affirmed that I should have been more curious. And I want to also add that my grandfather was someone who introduced me to herbs, and I remember he told me that the tree bark of willow tree is um, is good for the flu. And when I was introduced in biology, I learned that that tree bark of the willow tree has the same chemical component as aspirin does. So it was a lot of other things. He would have us going out into the woods to get different herbs. We didn't know what he was doing with them, but he had that ability. And again, I was always attracted to it, but he transitioned before I could really get into learning it. So I think there, like you said, there are many symbols and actions that we take that we can't explain, but it draws us back to where I think I'm convinced that we all need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And for those who may be reluctant, or have a fear, like you say, when you see it in your DNA, and then you incorporate it. As soon as you said you learned about it through the church, I figured it was Reverend Willie Wilson. I didn't know he was a priest, though. I went there once when he did a wedding, and I follow his daughter Anika, and I'm like, they seem like they're a little different tuned into this. So that's really good news. And Willie, it also came up for you when we looked at your past, and your grandfather is very much assisting you. He's very much alive and around, and he's excited that you're exploring this. We uncovered that quickly. So I'm excited, and to your point, Oya Ranti, yeah, I'm excited because the children do grasp it easily.
Mhm.
My grandchildren, without question, and they all were here when I started practicing. Without question, they're excited to bring food to the ancestors. When they pass water, or the yeah Oshun, they know that that's Oshun. Let's go bring something to Oshun, because they understand that there's something outside of us. See, that's one of the ways that they held us back. They didn't want us to look outside of ourselves,
Right.
or and how it was really within us.
Right.
They just made it something, God is in heaven and that's it. And if he likes you enough, he might give you some favor. But we didn't understand how we could take the elements of nature and just give and pray to the elements of nature, the Orishas, and have them maneuver, use it to our advantage.
And those in the same way, Willie, as you said with your grandfather, part of that nature is medicine,
Yeah.
right? It is, we say food is medicine, right?
Right.
And it could go one way or the other, right? And so there is in Orisha Obaluaye. And Baba Obaluaye is the Orisha of medicine, right? And again, when you think of all of them, they all have different attributes for one thing or another. But Baba Obaluaye is not the only one, right? It's considered, overall medicine. But there are many Orisha um, of of um, of herbology,
Mhm.
so to speak.
Well, let's just address that as well, because medicine means something differently when you're living a life that mitigates the onset of disease. Correct. So there's no extreme need for what some people call disease maintenance. So medicine from the earth is what you take every day so that you don't get sick. And if you do get sick, it's something that you can easily transition back into. But because of what we've been exposed to, if you've been smoking a pack a day, you've been eating anything you want, drinking however you want, you're going to have a different experience with your health, and it's going to take something extreme. And I don't think that we should expect that, but we should embrace what you're sharing so that we don't experience the pain that comes with the onset of extreme chronic disease.
Yeah. And listen, I would say you could talk about that better than me, Willie.
Well, I again, this experience that I'm having outside of, and I've been, lucky enough to have a career where I was able to create opportunities for people to learn, to understand, to appreciate the soil. And once you do that, it's foundational to everything else. Because the first thing I learned about growing food was, if you don't have good soil, you can't grow anything. And if the sun doesn't come up, you're not going to eat anything. And if it doesn't rain, so all this piece is something that you have to be patient with. And luckily, I'm a community organizer. I was able to, and still able to, guide other people to it. And I've seen it happen, that people have lived better lives because of that experience. And I do believe, and I share this with everybody, is that once you get out there, the ancestors bring you everything you want to know about gardening and farming, because that's the most basic element to your survival. And I don't think it leaves you. It comes back to you when you have your hands in the dirt.
And the beauty of studying herbs and plants in this practice, not only do you learn and understand the physical healing element, but you know how Jesus said, or like the mustard seed, like the
Right.
mustard seed. So we understand the Ashadi power on a metaphysical level, even not only just for healing our body, but for shifting things to bring, like take cinnamon. That's a great herb for love, a love potion, So we can look at them for healing and for bringing harmony and balance into our lives to live a better life in this dimension.
And you
Right.
know what? I want to shift with something I just thought about back to the movie.
Mhm.
And thank you for that thought, Ia, because yes, and I think that there's definitely spaces and places for us all to know and understand herbs in a better way, and how they support us, right? That those things again that are in nature. But one of the other things that I will say, going back to the movie, is Viola Davis's Naniska, her character. One of the other bases of our spiritual tradition is what we call Ori, right? And that is our head. Being able to have conversations with our own Ori on a daily basis. Some people, and again, when you think about it, people have all of these affirmations that they say to themselves every day. You know what? Today I'm strong. Today I'm blah blah blah. I'm gonna. That is you having a conversation with your Ori, right? And so when I think about the movie, another thing that really resonated with me was she used her own mind, in addition to calling on the ancestors. If you notice, she made an offering to the ancestors somewhere in the middle of the movie, towards the beginning to the middle of the movie. So she was communicating with them to be able to support her, but she also was able to make decisions for herself that is working in partnership. Because what for me and in my lineage, and I'm sure it's the same thing for Ia, it is that partnership between yourself, your spirit, your soul, your gut, and the ancestors and the Orisha, right? And you have this Father, Son, Holy Ghost, this Trinity. For me, that is my Trinity. What is it? Trinity. Because there is always, my prayer is for the ancestors and Orisha and my Ori to work together in partnership, and my Egbe, in partnership for all of us to be able to work together to help support me to do whatever it is that I need to do. But that is very important as well. And I know we've been talking a lot about ancestors, but I don't want to forget what our Ori is, because the Creator gave us, all that we needed to be able to think, to make decisions, to have that good character in EY Pele, to make the right decisions, and so on. And we have to every day have that conversation with ourselves, and ask for what we need. And ask for all of those elements to be able to work together for the greater good, for us to manifest our work in the way that we do on a daily basis.
Okay, I wanna introduce Mr. Brother Ibrahim Toure. You wanna introduce yourself?
Greetings, family. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Can you just,
Great.
we've kind of talked in detail about several things, but I wanted to introduce you because you have a religious practice that you embrace, and can you share that with us?
Well, first, I'll greet you all and just say that I'm a traditionalist, and my mind is open to the practices of our ancestors, from voodoo to the Ifa, Fa, and the Santeria, the different spiritual systems that um, our ancestors have created for us to be able to understand what the human psyche. And recently, within the last few years, I was introduced to a Kemetic initiation. And then from there, I went into the initiations of my mother's ancestors, or the Mende people, my grandfather's lineages. And so right now, I'm still just a student trying to understand what is so vast and profound that, I'm just a baby and trying to wrap my head around the basics. So, the I do have an understanding in the Kemetic cosmogonies, and the some initiation into the Dogon cosmogonies. But again, I'm still learning.
Ashe.
Shay. So can you give us a little, did you get a chance to see the movie? And we had their perspectives. We'd like to share your perspective on the Woman King or any other, because we kind of talked about how mass media has influenced it without knowing they were, I guess. You have any view on that?
I mean, there's several perspectives that one can take on the film in general. I'll speak from the aspect that it's good that we're able to produce films that express the greatness of our cultures. I think that also, you know, they don't put that much money into expressing a film if they think it's going to bring some type of freedom to the people. I'm sorry, but that's just the way that I see it. I
Well,
think
the
that
what?
the expression of the traditions was important. I think that the showing that our people's power comes from something um, something that's just internal, but also um, is able to be communicated to us through physical things, because it's truly invisible, right? And I think that when you see in the film that I think she was my favorite warrior too, the priestess. She she I don't remember her name, but she divined, and it was through her divination that you can see that we understood what the what our let's say protagonist in this case was, Woman King, was facing in her inner turmoil. And and again, that's what the spiritual systems express. How do we as human beings deal and understand with our human psyche? What systems do we utilize to be able to understand how we show up in the world, and what our true powers are like, and how do we access those powers? And I think that you know it was a surface level. They couldn't get too far with it, because it's I don't think that the spiritual systems are for everyone in terms of being able to utilize it to help others. There are people who are clients, like you will go to a doctor and the doctor will give you a prescription for your particular for what your body is showing that your illness is. And then there are people who are going to become doctors, and no matter what it is, if it's E5, if it's five, it's the comedic sciences, you're going to be on one of those sides of the fence, and then maybe eventually cross over. So I think in the film it was good to be able to see that, and even in the end, I think the end was powerful as well. The beginning and the end proved to show the power of the traditions. The first aspect was, okay, I'm going to divine to see what is it that we're dealing with. And then the last aspect, you see, okay, we give honor to our ancestors, those who have passed, and in their case, showing and pouring libations to those souls that they are connected to that have transitioned to go to other places. So I think, in respect to the movie, I think those two things were very important. Everything else was a matter of politics, strategy, history, um, and culture, which we're able to see the different ways that African people interact with each other before even Europeans were
Right. Okay. We we're coming down to the last 3 minutes, and we can do outtakes. I think he fell off for a second. We can do outtakes. I thought we had a question in the box, but it didn't come back up. We can do outtakes to close out. Where do we head from here?
Well, I'm with Ia. I think if we start with our ancestors and our Ori, first of all, like Ia was mentioning, that trilogy, well, it was actually a quadrant when you bring in the Egbe, bring in the Ia, me too, but when one of the things I usually when I'm before an audience and I speak to people, I have them grab their head because people in a moment of silence, when they reach for their head, they can feel that energetic force that we might refer to as Reiki, that connection. And when we learn to honor our God self, which we believe our God self is housed in our Ori, and so even in the morning, not only are you saying affirmations, I take it above the affirmations because we are not only are we affirming, we're praying and we're actually giving directives so that our Ori, our inner Ori, our soul's desire can match our destiny. So as we do that, as we do that as a practice, and as from there going to practice with our ancestors, I really believe that we'll all be led to the next step for us. Like the brother said, some of us may be called for the voodoo tradition, or some of us may be called to Fa or Ifa, or some of us might be buried right in Christianity. It might be right where they're supposed to be to do it, but they're doing the power of it.
Okay, we
You know,
got a question.
because the day that my mother brought me to this, I posted, I never will forget, I was posting on Facebook, when will the church teach us how to walk on water?
Mm,
And a
all right.
chair moved across the room. And I said, my ancestors trying to tell me how we can do
All right. Okay, we got one question.
it.
In the African tradition in prayer, are God and the ancestors the same thing? Or do we pray and seek guidance from the ancestors and gods respectively? All right, they're separate.
I would say respectively, um, and that they are separate. Our ancestors, those that we knew, and those that we didn't know, are in our tradition considered those people um, in two different ways. One, in that are our bloodline, right? They were people who walk this earth. And in other cases, they may not be in our bloodline, but they still are ancestors that we pray to, and that we ask to support us. And it's a reciprocal relationship, right? Because in addition to us asking, can they support us in prayer, and as we stand on their shoulders, we also ask of them, what do they need? And they come and tell us in their dreams, in our dreams, and it manifests in many different ways, as Ed talked about, the chair moving across the floor. And so this is not a one-way relationship. This is very much a reciprocal relationship, when we're in communication with our ancestors. But then there is who we would call Olodumare, that we pray to as well, and Ifa that we pray to. And so they are not one and the same. They are separate, and two different people that we would pray to.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't
thank
know if you
you.
wanted to share anything else.
Thank you. Do you have an outtake? How we gonna close it up?
You know what? Just thinking about bringing it back to the movie again. There's so many things that I loved about the movie. There were some things that I didn't love so much. But what I will say is, when we're thinking about our call to action, right, and our charge coming from that particular movie. And Willie, is interesting because yesterday I was watching some film from the trip we took this summer, and I used this clip of your son, and for the call to action, and I have to send that to you. But literally, I did a presentation yesterday to people all over the world, and they saw your son for about 30 seconds. And what I would say is, from a perspective in a space and place of a call to action, what does that look like for us in terms of being warrior healers, right? And how are we showing up every day in our own lives, in our own practices, regardless of what that practice is, to be able to first and foremost heal ourselves, and then being able to support the healing. Because my husband says it all the time, and I was fighting it for a long time, but he's like, we're at war, and quite frankly, we are. So the same way they were at war in this movie, we are also at war in this nation right now, and with us as Black people. And so, what are we doing to be warrior healers in our own homes and in our own communities,
Right.
to be able to have that transformation and that change, knowing and understand that warrior doesn't always mean fighting with those weapons, right? Those are mental ways. You can fight by only supporting Black businesses, right? Because you can hurt folks in their pockets. And so there are very many ways. And when I think about Oya, thinking about being a warrior, people always think about, as Ia said, the iron and the so on, which is also, Oya with the thunder and all of that good stuff, but also calculated, right? And that transformation to be able to heal at the same time that we are simultaneously fighting. And unfortunately, that's where we are. I ain't even gonna say unfortunately, that's just where we are right now. And so that would just be my call to action and my charge to the listening audience, is how are we showing up to be able to heal, while we're fighting at the same time.
And where does it begin? Brother Ibrahim, you got an
Yeah.
outtake?
Yeah, I just wanted to address some things because I know, like, when people are listening to practitioners, we use language to because our ancestors they speak different languages, and each one of these paths, these systems, they're shrouded in language. And sometimes when we communicate and we are using those languages, like, the average person who's listening will not understand what we're talking about, and a lot of times we take that for granted. But I did want to touch on the prayer communication, because I think that there's, from the traditional perspective, there's three types of deities, three types of gods. There's the one that we know that encompasses all things, but then there are deities that are divine elements, and then there are deities that are in the human condition. So what I mean by deities in the human conditions, they're deities that experience life as we know it. But then there's those that are beyond this life, beyond what we experience as human beings. And then there are things that we can never fathom, deities that are higher that we can never fathom. And when it comes to prayer, I agree with what the sister was saying in terms of the relationship between us and our ancestors. And the concept would be, no matter who you call your God, if you're a Christian, you say God, or if you're a Muslim, you say Allah, if you're a Jew, Yahweh, if you're a Hindu, whatever your particular monotheistic or Abrahamic or even traditional way that you can
You're breaking up,
We lost him.
Ibrahim. All right, we'll reconnect with him. He just tapped out. So, Ibrahim,
Yeah, I
you
was,
good?
I just wanted to finish the point. Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No matter how you perceive or think of your God, there's one thing that's clear, that God created man and woman to produce other human beings. God didn't just, you know, pop men and women, just coming from the sky and just coming to earth. There was a process. And if you're intelligent, you come from your mother and your father. And you know that their mother and their father came from their mother and their father. So we see there's a clear line from you to God. And that is what we call the ancestral spirit. And no person can deny that. And because we see that there's an ancestral spirit, and that relationship is to show us that if there's any deities or any beings, because some people have deities or gods within their bloodline. So it's like, no matter where you are in the world, you've come from your parents, and because of that relationship, there's no other entities that have your best interest in mind than those that you come from. And why is that? Because one day we all will die. Every human being will experience what death is. And in the words of the traditions, there's a concept called reincarnation. When you die, you will have to go to the world of the dead, and then some of us will become ancestors if we're raised by our family members. But if we haven't completed our soul journey and we have some work to do on ourselves, we'll return. And we say we will return in our bloodline. And that's the reason why we have to take care of our children. It's the reason why we take care of our family. It's also realistic, because we will one day return through one of them. One day we will be the child born, just like we are the ones now. We are ancestors who were born to our parents. So that is those are the prayers, and to those people and to those beings that we pray to within ourselves, because they know best what we need in this life. And then we also pray to the deities, because the deities control the function of the systems that we live in.
That's right. Can you hear me? Okay, we are out of time. We'll have to do this again. This was fun, and we'll have to do it again. There's a lot to learn, and I'm going to close with the last two lines of the Booty Bookman's prayer when he said, "We all should throw away the image of the white man's God, and who is so pitiless. Listen to the voice for liberty that sings in our hearts. Listen to the voice of liberty that sings in our heart." And we're going to close out with that. Ibrahim,
Yes.
we're going to close out. You got one last thing to share?
Well, no, I just want to thank you for for the opportunity. I was, occupied prior, so I'm sorry for coming late. And I want to tell the people who are listening that, we've been conditioned to believe that our traditions are evil. We've been conditioned to believe that the way for our development is going to come through what oppressors have given us. And if we think that what our oppressors have given us is going to free us, well, then we have another thing to think about. I think the best thing that we can do is to ask the existence, ask questions to creation, ask questions. Because when you ask questions, and depending on sincerity and the clarity of your questions, the existence will give us answers. So if you don't know where to start with asking serious questions to the existence. And I wish everybody well. I wish everybody find their destiny, find their path, and may the Creator and the ancestors continue to guide and bless everyone.
Ashe. Ladies, you want to close out?
No, I don't have anything else to add other than thank you, um for inviting um me on the show and being able to share some insight into our spiritual practice. And definitely agree with Brother Ibrahim from the perspective of folks not gonna know what we're talking about, right? When we using certain language. I hope I expressed and tried to keep it as simple as I could. But doing that additional research and being able to reach out because I can avail myself if anyone have any additional questions or even to my elders in this tradition to be able to answer any questions if the audience has some additional questions. So, but thank you for allowing us to come on and to speak a little bit about E5 and our connection to the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I say, I'm in agreement with everything that has been said. And one thing I invite all of the listeners to do is to reserve the right to change your mind at any time. Because the challenge for many of us have been that they told us and we believed it, but we didn't feel it in our spirit and we didn't reserve the right to say, maybe there's another way. So reserve the right. And I believe your ancestors will support you on this journey. They'll be delighted that you're looking to empower yourself. So go for it, lift them up. Because as Willie said, the biggest thing in this practice is the law of reciprocity. I think, I mentioned that, the law of reciprocity. We give to them, and boy, they're ready to give to us. I have so many testimonies on that. So enjoy and thank you. Peace and blessings, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Love all y'all. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.